Thank you for coming to West Rapids Elementary School. My name is Sean Martinson, and with me is Clayton Linder. We will be the principals this year at West Rapids. We have a couple people that will speak after me, so I'll kind of talk a little bit about the history of where we've been at, which is really me complaining for many years as a principal in this district. Where's Joe at? Silco's nearby somewhere. So when I started in 318, Silco heard me complain a lot, and there were things that we would talk about that we never shared with the community. Not because you didn't want to hear it, and unfortunately it was tight on space, and over the years it got worse and worse to the point where we had kids and staff working in rooms that were designed for custodial closets, table storage, ends of hallways. It was the reality, and it became the point of, nobody wants to hear complaints, and we didn't complain, and we did the best that we could with what we had. But when it became apparent that we were outgrowing our buildings, the community stepped up, and you stepped up in a big way. I know Pat will talk a little bit later about the superintendents that came through, but as now a building principal, I'm glad that my complaints will now change about space limiting what we can do for your kids to now switch to what good we can do for your kids in the community because of the space. You're going to hear it a ton. Thank you, and it can never be said enough. Thank you. Thank you to the businesses. Thank you to the community. Thank you to everybody that stepped up. I have friends and family that either voted yes or no, and own businesses that voted yes or no. But at the end of the day, thank you. A lot of people will be making this work for many years to come. When I started in Rapids, I was at Cohasset Elementary School, and I still say to this day that the structure was moved there in 1922. So we had buildings that were over 100 years old, and they've served our community for multiple generations, and it's exciting to look at this building and say it will serve our community for multiple generations. So thank you, and it can never be said enough. From the heart, thank you. I will stop complaining about our facilities, and I will focus on all the good that we can now do. So thank you.
I'm Matt Gross. I'm the superintendent for the ISD 318 school district. Welcome. I was talking to the principal group this morning on a video call, and we're in that kind of the end of the grind here, planning and getting ready. School starts 2 weeks from today, and I said, if you're running out of gas, if your tank's on E, come this afternoon, because you're going to see children that are excited about schools. You're going to see parents who are going to be able to show their kids we're going to go to school in a couple weeks, and it's just an exciting time. So it's a good way to get gas in your tank. It's a great afternoon to celebrate, and like Sean mentioned, this building represents the completion of a long project, the answering of a lot of questions, but it represents the vision of a community ultimately. It's more than just creative, and it's more than just the hard work that went in. It represents the vision of a community, and it's a vision that includes opportunities. It's a vision that represents a community saying we want what's best for our kids. And it's a building that represents a recognition that an investment in education is an investment in the future. I referenced yesterday the old Central School in downtown Grand Rapids that was built in 1895, and I had a gentleman come up to me and he said, well, the building actually was moved, and he corrected me on my dates. There are schools in our district that were built that old. So whether they're still that one or the one in Cohasset and the moving, the point is that this community has a history, it has a legacy of investing in education, and this building represents that again. I wasn't able to be here when the referendum was passed, but I know what it takes to get something like this done, and had the chance to talk to groups that were involved along the way, and I want to make sure and recognize some of them today. I know there's more people than I could possibly thank. There's more people than I could possibly remember, but I do want to start by recognizing a few people and organizations. First, the Elementary Facilities Task Force, the Vote Yes Committee, and the design team. If anybody here was on one of those teams, please raise your hand. Good, nice and high, thank you. Groups like that are what make these projects become a reality. They're what inspire the building to be what it ends up being, and we can't thank them enough. We have some local dignitaries and legislators here. Representative Eklund is here, Senator Eichhorn and Senator Tomasoni. If you'll give a wave, thank you very much for being here. Members and representatives of the Iron Range Resources and Rehabilitation Board, if you want to wave too, thank you for your partnership. It took leadership. It took creativity, it took advocacy. Eventually somebody in many different places had to say yes, and so I want to thank you for your help and support. The city of Grand Rapids and soon will be in Cohasset, and even the county of Itasca, great partners in our work. The land that we're sitting on or standing on right now, it was part of an exchange that we needed to make. Our city needed to be willing partners, and they were. And so I just want to thank our local units of government for working with schools, for recognizing that education is economic and community development at its finest. So thank you to our civic partners. We also have some representatives from Wold, our architects, from ICS, our construction partners, and finance partners with Ellers here today. I want to thank them. I mentioned yesterday you get one chance at getting this right and getting this done, and what you'll see inside if you stick around for the tours, I'd encourage you to do that, is a building that's really well thought out. Sean mentioned some of the spaces that we have now that we just didn't have before, but this building recognizes the tradition of education and spaces like that, but also how we need to adapt and change in education in the 21st century, and I remind people often the 21st century is 20% done. So we're already looking ahead to that, but we need to adapt and change, and so I want to thank our partners for helping us get this building right, because we do just get one chance. I'd also like to thank the school board. They're standing behind me here. Building projects invite a lot of risk, they invite a lot of criticism, and they're hard on people. And the easy thing to do would have been to just wait, to let another board deal with it, and to kick the can down the road. But this board recognized that the longer we waited, the more our community, the more our kids would have to wait for what it really needed. And the board members here, there are board members that were on this at the very beginning in the history, and so a lot of board members took risks. Board members provided leadership, board members provided vision, and make those tough choices and show a commitment to our community and our kids that you signed up to serve, so thank you. I'd like to thank our district staff. Their support through the process and willingness to get involved in design. We've had people in here moving into rooms today, and our custodial staff's been busy cleaning. Our staff are invested in these buildings. They're invested in this community, and they don't just work here, they live here. They have children that will go to school here. This isn't just about a zip code to them. This is about a calling and a way of life, and so I just want to thank our district staff too. Yeah. Finally, I just want to reiterate what Sean said. Our community ultimately had to step up. All the planning and all the work that goes in design, all that comes to a stop if the community doesn't get behind the project. And I want to thank all of you for saying yes, for supporting this school district, and for demonstrating that just like that school represents in downtown, that you're still committed to education in this community. You've made our elementary buildings top-notch, and we intend to make sure that what happens inside them is top-notch as well. Thank you. With that, I'll introduce Mr. Pat Mcdurry, School Board Chair.
Thank you all for being here today. This is really quite a deal. Before I jump into some perspective on history here, I want to introduce our current board members, Molly Miskovich, Melissa Barr, Minnie Nuring, David Marty, and we have Tom Peltier that came back from Arizona just for this. He left our board a few months ago, and he wanted to be here for these openings. So, Tom, thank you. Also, Matt mentioned other board members that kind of have come and gone when this whole process started. And Ben Hawkins, I think community members probably know Ben. Ben was on our board. He was our business manager. We brought him back for an interim business manager as well. Invaluable in his knowledge. Harvey Heidela. Harvey was going to try to be here today, but he just couldn't make it. And then Marianne Olson. All of these board members, obviously current and future, were here kind of from the start to the end on where we're at today. You know, these projects don't happen overnight, and we think it does, but it really doesn't. And I want to give you just a little historical perspective, so bear with me a little bit. This really started back in 2011 and 2012 when Joe Silka was superintendent. He went to the board and convinced the board that we needed to do a space study in regards to all of our buildings within 318 with emphasis on the elementary. Well, that study came back and said we had some deficiencies and we needed to do some work and improve our elementaries, not knowing for sure what direction we were going to go. Well, Joe left the district, and when Dr. Bruce Thomas came into the district. When Dr. Thomas came here, he reviewed that study, had someone else take a look at the study, and the study still stood firm that we needed to do something with our elementaries. So in 2015, we went out for a referendum, and that was November of 2015, and the referendum failed miserably. We as a board took a step back and realized we needed to do something different as far as engagement with the community. At that point, in December of 2015, Bud Stone from our Grand Rapids Chamber reached out and said, can the Chamber help in any way? So Bud, along with some Chamber members led by Ken Corbett and Mindy Nuring, who wasn't on our board at the time, brought together some Chamber members and kind of did their own little study and looked at it and reaffirmed that something needed to be done with our elementaries, not necessarily a plan, but just reaffirming. And that helped us with the community. Under Dr. Thomas's leadership, we put together an EFT, as mentioned, Elementaries Facility Task Force Group. And that was in January of 2017. Mindy and Kent headed that as far as community members, along with Jeff Schultz from ICS and Jessica Setness. Where are you, Jess? Right here. And those two assisted this community group. In June of 2017, the Elementary Task Force brought forth a recommendation to the board to build 2 new elementary schools and remodel Cohasset. From that day forward, let me take one step backwards here. Some of the reasons why, and we can sit here and say, well, I think I know the reasons, and sometimes that gets lost to where we're at today. And it really was all lack about space. We were short in space because our enrollment was up. Okay, and that's a good thing all the way across the board. We had 14 portables on our 4 elementary schools, 14 of them. And some of them were there for quite a few years, some were there just for a few years. But that's certainly not a way to be teaching students, right, in portables. Also, our 5th grade was moved to the middle school in Grand Rapids to free up some of the space here at our current elementaries because of the influx that we had of students. And then last, just the inefficiency of old buildings and where we're at. And that was the pretense that the CFT went out into the community and start having dialogue with the community about it. So from September 2017 till April of 2018, we had another new superintendent, Joni Olson. Joni worked with the EFT, worked with Kent, worked with Mindy, and worked with the community, going out, educating the community on the why we needed new elementary schools to better serve our students. April 10th, 2018, we passed a referendum for $68.9 million to build these 2 new elementaries and build Cohasset. Unbelievable. And it passed by 67 votes. Okay? A win's a win. In my book, doesn't matter. But we got where we're at today because of you, the community members, and the people that saw the need here for this. Again, unbelievable. Summer of 2018, design committee was developed with the community members and ISD staff with guiding principles and work towards development on how the school should look. We also reached out to different user groups and wanted their input as well. What do you want to see in our new schools? And there was a number of user groups. All total, there was over 200 community members and over 2,000 hours put into this design group. And again, that's a lot of thank to you, community members, staff, everybody involved. Made a world of difference. Early spring of 2019, construction started. new construction here, as well as the remodel of Cohasset. Summer of 2019 to June 2020, Joni Olson had left us. Sean Martinson came in as the interim superintendent, and Sean kind of headed up the construction piece. He was at the table during all these construction meetings and making that flow go through. July of 2020, Matt Gross comes on board, and this is where we're at today. Matt had the honor of really pulling all the pieces together and getting the school set, ready to open. Now, stop and think about that. 5 superintendents, and you think, wow, are we the only project in the state of Minnesota that had 5 superintendents to get where we're at today? Some might think, well, that's a bad thing. For a school board member that was here from start to finish, that was a positive thing that happened there with those superintendents. Each superintendent brought something to the board that made a difference on this project right up until Matt coming in July of 2020. And in the end, I think we got a better project, better schools to better serve our students going forward in the future. So when we started this project, one of the goals of the board was to keep as many local contractors here in Itasca County as part of this project. I'm happy to say that 1/3 of this work done on these new schools, as well as the Cohasset remodel, were contractors from Itasca County. 2/3 of those contractors were within 80 miles of these construction sites. From our perspective, that was success in our goal as a board member. Again, we wanted to see the new schools, but a priority for us is to make sure that we can keep those contractors and keep those jobs local here. That better serves us and helps our economy here. And we did accomplish that. Also, I want to give credit to ICS and Jeff and his crew. When we initially started this construction project, we were looking at the fall of 2021 for opening. They came to the table and said, we believe we can get this done for the fall of 2020. So we're actually ahead of 1 year by opening these schools, and thanks to Jeff and his crew and managing the contractors to make that happen. So thank you for that, Jeff, and your group there. So this project comes to completion almost 8.5, 9 years from the start of the study that Joe did back in 2011 and 2012. And I mentioned yesterday, one of the leadership programs that I went through, they said, you know, you plant the seed and you water it. And sometimes it grows fast, and sometimes it grows not so fast. But in this particular case, it took us almost 8.5 from that initial study to where we're at today. And a lot of effort, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears, a lot of work by you, community, a lot of work by our staff, administrators, and everybody as a whole to get where we're at. So I'm very proud of that as a whole. And lastly, I just want to call out some thank yous here. And to Kent Corbett and Mindy Nuring. They headed that EFT group. Their leadership got us where we're at today, and it really started with the chamber project and rolled into the EFT. We asked them, and they were a little hesitant about wanting to lead it up, but they led it up, and I really got to give them a lot of credit. I know there's a lot of people that worked on it, but it's because of their leadership where we're at today. So Kent, Mindy, thank you very much for the leadership there. And lastly, I want to thank Jessica. Where are you at, Jessica? You know, from the onset of that first referendum, Jessica, she's our communication person for 318. Between pushing all the various communications in the various venues, modes out there, she was notifying the community, keeping them up to date, parents up to date, staff up to date on where we were at and where we were going. And we couldn't do it without you, Jess, so thank you for that as well. You know, I stand here today and look out, and this is 318 pride right here. This is 318 pride here in these two new buildings in a class of school that we're getting ready to open. But again, without you, this couldn't have happened. So thank you from the bottom of our heart. And on behalf of the board, we truly, truly appreciate all the efforts that were put into this. Thank you for being here today.